Hello and welcome to yet another edition of Time Pass with the New Indian Express. I have with me Swara Bhaskar, who always speaks her mind, acts beautifully, stands by what she says, and is one of the really few independent voices in the industry and indeed in society at large today. And I admire her for it, and I admire her choices in cinema and the way she's worked on her craft as well. I think a lot of times politics tends to gain precedence over her work, which is a little sad sometimes because her work is so extraordinary. I think she was just brilliant in Anarkali of Ara. It's one of the finest films I've seen. And she's been so good in so many others. She's in a new web series called Flesh, where she plays a big, tough cop. Very physical role and very demanding role, I think. And it was quite enjoyable, Swara. This is for Eros now. So, welcome to Time Pass, and thank you so much for joining us. And how has it been headlining Flesh?
Thank you so much for having me, and it's always a pleasure to chat with you. So I'm so happy we could finally do this. Flesh was it was really hard. So let's just start with that right there. It
Yeah.
was really hard, but it was really exciting and it was really fun because I think that for me, of course, it was the first time I'm not just playing a cop, but it's also the first time I'm doing any kind of sort of action,
Action.
action in that sort of action sense of the word. And I think it's interesting because if you look at the kind of body of work that our male heroes have,
Yeah.
all of them have a cop role.
Yeah.
It's a milestone in your career.
Yeah.
But there are actresses whose whole careers have gone by and they've never played a female cop. It just somehow never happened. So I feel quite happy and blessed actually that I was able to sort of tread into territory that is traditionally so typically male space. And of course, with the opening up of the OTT platform, we get a lot of opportunities now to play unusual characters that we perhaps didn't earlier, would not have been able to. Flesh is a very, very interesting, very real and very unblinking look at the world of nepotism. This is what, do you see what's happening? This is such a moment. You should record it and play it back. It's a...
This is real life taking over.
This is the effect of listening to all these awful TV debates constantly and having to answer the same damn question again and again. I think that Flesh is a really unblinking look at human trafficking and that world, and it's a world that we don't actually often see on screen. I mean, I know that we've had Mardani and Love Sonia, but that's really the only a very in-depth, devoted films that I can think of on the subject of trafficking. And not, of course, we've seen prostitution and those kind of themes. I think what's interesting about Flesh is that because it's a series format and you have that time, it kind of allows you to delve into aspects that are more than just the cop chasing the bad guy. So you actually look at that world and you actually look at the nitty-gritty of how it operates. I mean, you may have seen the trailer, and it's in that it's the, there's actually a shot where we've looked at how do these girls go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
That's actually, there's a scene of them wearing the diaper. So it's that level of actually closeness that we have gone to this world. And so for me, that was interesting. I loved the script when I read it. And of course, it was a challenge to be playing a cop. And I wanted to kind of be able to see if I could pull that off at all. And I haven't seen the ready show, actually. I must tell you this, that I haven't seen the final edit and the post VFX, the post grading and the sound mix and everything. I haven't seen the completed show. So I'm actually really nervous because I don't know what the hell I've done.
No, you've actually done very well. I saw the first 3 episodes. There's a scene in it, Swara, where you're lifting your shirt and you just touch your bruise. You've just got hit in the stomach by not a nice guy, and you lift your shirt and you touch your bruise, and you can almost feel the pain. Where you're just touching it lightly, and you can feel the pain just transmitting itself on the screen. So it's quite as you said, unblinking, because it's many layers of trafficking as well. It's
Yeah.
not just prostitution, but it's also all kinds of human trafficking. And when you start thinking about it, I wonder, the research has been quite extraordinary.
Yeah, I think,
Talk a little about the process by which this series came about.
I mean, I honestly must admit that I was not privy to the writing of the show because as actors, you actually come on, uh, well, the last,
Right.
we're the last addition we're the last in and the first out. And this is what
Yeah.
people don't realize about
Yeah.
how we do the least amount of work and walk away with the most amount of credit, actually. But Danish is a friend of mine, the director, and so he was actually talking to me a little bit about the show even before, while he was writing it, and at that point I didn't know that I'd be in it. And it was interesting because he said that they a lot of what has gone into the show is actually based um on accounts of police officers and the NGOs that do these rescue operations.
Right.
So their real experiences and what they saw. And one of the things, and I can never forget this, that Danish told me, was that he said that, one cop actually told him that in somewhere in Bombay, in the suburbs, in Borivali, or in, somewhere in the suburbs in Bombay, so, in some sense, very much part of our city, they found a housewife who was running a prostitution rack. Like, she was not running a rack, she was renting her home after her husband went to work and her children went to school. So from 8 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon, she was alone at home and had this time free. She was renting her house for people, for these pimps or people to bring these little girls in, young underage girls in, and this is what was happening in her home, which from after 2 o'clock was
Boggles the
the
mind.
home of her children.
Yeah.
So, for me, what is the most disturbing thing, and this is what I realized, and you'll see it while you watch the show, but also for me, while I was talking to the people, the complicity of civil society
Yeah.
in this nexus is actually the most disturbing aspect of it. Because, who are these people? Actually, that they're not aliens who are coming and trafficking children. They are people from within our communities. They might be living in our buildings for all you know, or, I mean, one doesn't know. But I'm saying that it's actually so damning, the levels of complicity of civil society, that that is what has disturbed me the most while I was part of this show. And of course, then the very obvious thing in it, which is that what level of evil must exist within all of us, that this is what we can do to children.
Absolutely.
There is all of that we've actually tried to touch upon. For me personally, what I basically did was, when I had to do the show, I began to just speak to as many police officers as I could, who had both men and women, and people who are from the IPS and the state cadres, to also understand that whole world and those hierarchies. And what I found was that all the police officers across, wherever they came from, whatever their rank was, whatever, they all had this very palpable frustration at how easily the system gets manipulated by criminals. And that, they work so hard and risk their lives, and then ek call aayega upar se, or some bribe or some minister, and they have to let the person that they have spent so much effort on catching, or a case that they've been working so hard on, and they have to let it go. And I was very struck by the fact that that's the exact same frustration in everybody. And so I used that to become the emotional motivator for Radha. That she is not just a ballsy badass cop, she's a very frustrated cop. Right. She is, and it's there in the, there is that scene where she's caught the pimp the night before, and the next day he's been gotten bail from High Court.
Exactly.
And so constantly in the show, you're seeing that her battle is not just with the criminals. Yeah. Her battle is with the system also, and she's constantly got this feeling, and that and I don't personally, of course, espouse a trigger happy notion of justice, or I don't necessarily believe in the idea of on the spot justice. And there's this dialogue which has become quite viral in the show, which is कि मैं मैं चाहती हूँ कि traffickers को नंगा खड़ा करके चौपाटी पे machine gun से उड़ा दूँ.
Right.
I mean, if you ask me personally, that is not a position I would espouse in my personal capacity ever. But somewhere that sentiment is actually coming from a frustration which is deeper than just an abuse of power.
Right.
You know, so that was all very interesting for me. This is all stuff that I have never been privy to in any way. You know, I didn't know any of this.
Right.
So that was very interesting.
How did you bring your sociological experience, your experience as a sociologist, 2 years of studying it, to this series?
So, I mean, for me, there was really what I normally do, and this is actually a process that I have for myself, which is that I first bring my studies as a literature student
Right.
to which is my BA in literature, and I always do a very
Here's
close
at Miranda.
reading of the text, and I do a textual analysis, and if you have see any of my scripts are full of notes and sticky, those sticky notes and like flaps where I've written stuff and so on. And then what I begin to do is that once I've done that, I ask some very basic questions. I ask, who is this girl? Whose daughter is she?
Right.
Are her parents agricultural labor? Are they labor in the city? Is it a rickshaw wala? Is it a pan wala? Is it a sarkari babu? Or is it an IAS officer's daughter? Or an upper middle class businessman's daughter? Or a businessman or an upper middle class person's daughter? What school did she go to? Did she go to a Hindi medium school or did she go to an English medium school? Because, and that's the level of basically sociological context that I'm trying to give all my characters, because that will decide this person's gestures, her body language, her awareness levels. For example, and I always say this, the gesture of like rolling your eyes.
Yeah.
This is a gesture that has come to India from American television.
Absolutely.
This is not a gesture that is native to India. Or even this.
Yeah.
The shrugging of your shoulders, this tilt of your head. These are all gestures that have come to us from the West. When you actually go into the interiors of India, or when you go into, now of course people are a lot more exposed, so even that is changing. But until the I would say TikTok generation, Indians, we talk, this is how we explain. We explain with our hands,
Right.
We're very animated people. We bob our head in a totally different way. So it's small things like this that I pick up. Like, for example, if I have to play, for example, now, and I would actually, this is something that I learned from NK Sharma when I was in Delhi in Act 1 and in IPTA. I had my senior, and of course, now dear friend Ravinder Randhawa, who's a writer himself. He's the writer of Hamid. And he was one of our seniors in IPTA, and he would always say that just keep looking at people's bodies. What do their bodies do? How do their bodies respond? Because that is what you have to you have to soak that in. So I remember when I first came to Bombay, I was constantly looking at the machiwalis and how they were sitting.
Right.
On their haunches, and that comfortable, it's a horrendous position. It is such an uncomfortable position.
Yeah.
But for them, that is their most natural position. You will always find them, that is their resting position.
Right.
So, small things like this is what I would notice. I mean, of course, in the case of Radha, because she is ultimately an IPS officer, she's obviously an educated person. There is it was in some senses a familiar body language, because it's a body language I know. Right. I don't have to research it. But for Radha, I didn't have to. What I really had to work on for Radha, weirdly, was a couple of things, or maybe not so weirdly. One, how to hold a gun, because I freaking hated it, and I was a disaster at it, and I did not know that blank cartridges make some horrible noise.
Right.
And so I couldn't shoot without flinching, and that's the reason I really hope that they do a second season, because now I know what to expect, and now I will train properly for it, and I have these big plans of joining the shooting range in Delhi and taking lessons in shooting. I have understood the roots of my ahimsa. My personal ahimsa lie in being scared of guns. Good. This is what I have discovered. I trained for running, because we had a lot of chase sequences. And Danish, the first time I ran, Danish was like, "What are you doing? You're running like a girl." And I was like, "I am a girl." And he was like, "No, you're a cop." So I actually did classes for running with an athlete and with actually a boxer and Abhishek Sharma. And he taught me that, he was like, "No, you're landing on your heels. You should actually be landing on your toes." And how much to lift, how to land, where to put your body weight, how to move your hands. So I actually did classes for this, for running, because I hope that the running has improved through the show, because I haven't seen it. So
no, it looks pretty good to me. I didn't know that there were different kinds of running as well. This is new to
Yeah,
me.
apparently, if you're sprinting, you have to your foot should land in a different way. If you're jogging, it should land in a different way. So I also had no idea of all this.
But it's so fantastic. As an actor, you inhabit so many different lives.
It
It's
is.
exciting, but it's also really tough. I mean, for me, your transformation in V-Ray the Wedding was also a difficult thing because, again, you're playing someone who's clearly not from your comfort zone, right?
Not
You're
at all.
a very
Yeah,
rich, uh,
yeah,
snobby kid. I mean, not so
yeah,
snobby. She's quite nice, but a
yeah.
rich kid basically.
Yeah, I
So
think that niceness was just basically my inability to be a snob. That's actually what it was. I but yeah, I actually, very strangely, ma'am, now that you say it, I have to say to you that Veere was amongst the hardest parts for me to play, because I think what has happened with me is that weirdly, like for typical actresses, the glamour zone is their comfort zone,
right.
and when they get out and they do the non-glamour thing, that's the big, like, oh wow, you stepped out of your comfort zone and you did all this. I
But
think for
no, it's
me,
the opposite.
it's the opposite. What has become the comfort zone is actually these really gritty
Yeah.
parts, whether it's a Nilbate or an Anarkali, or even in, even in some sense, Ranjana and Bindiya is a very rooted character.
Right.
It's very earthy. Um, for me, and at some level, even Rasbhari and uh, the characters I played in Rasbhariya are very desi rooted
Yeah.
characters.
Yeah.
So I take to that very quickly. Though I was terrified of Veere the Wedding. I existed, I shot in a state of terror, and I used to tell Ria that you've ruined my life. I mean, for me, all my acting just got out in bloody wearing those clothes and doing that makeup, and I just couldn't. I mean, it was like a torture. But it was great because I think that everyone was like, you've never looked like this before. And I was like, yeah, I have never felt like this before. And I'd never done a role where there was so much prep was about dieting and
Right.
about losing weight and about looking a certain way. And then I just told myself that, Swara, when you're willing to go to Ara and go to dance troops and go in the middle of the night and watch these shows sitting alone with strangers and all these men around you, and or in Nilbate you're going to Agra and you're like, spending the days with these ladies who work in homes and walking with them everywhere, then I mean, you should just look at the dieting and
Yeah.
the
Part of your job.
gymming and the body as your prep work.
Yeah.
That's all it is, and that's what I did ultimately. And I think it was great because it really opened. It kind of I think that everything you do teaches you something, about your own craft. And it was great, and I'm also very excited for V-Day too, because I want to be able to, again, now I know what I could do and what I didn't do well. So now I've identified that. Now I want to be able to, I think it's great that your career gives you a chance to sort of better what you have done already.
Is that happening, Viri, too?
Yeah, apparently. I mean, I only see it on Ria's Instagram and Karina's Instagram. They keep joking with each other, so I'm assuming something's happening.
How exciting! But of course, the trouble with doing a movie like that is that even in your obit, I hope not soon, it will be written that she did the first, perhaps, masturbation. Not even the first, but she pleasured herself on screen.
Well, I think I definitely introduced the vibrator to the mainstream
Yes,
Indian screen for
and
sure.
of course, it is astounded people globally, as if women don't pleasure themselves. But so often, Swara, what you do on screen, what you do off screen, always lands you in some sort of trouble. Trouble in quotes. But has it ever affected affected your parts, the parts that you play? Has your politics sometimes given you fewer choices? Does that happen sometimes?
I mean, I think that this is something that I have pretended to myself did not happen. I have tried to tell myself that this is not happening, and I've denied it in public also. But I think that I really have to now admit that it has
Right.
happened,
Yeah.
and of course it's happened. And I think that we uh, and now it's happened at different levels. So one is, of course, where producers come and tell you that you're trouble, you're getting the reputation of being trouble, you're getting you have a nuisance value, and that's the words that someone used to me, and stuff like that. But it's also been in the form of people saying to me that um, actually saying to my managers or my agency that for something that we're actually dealing with, saying that no, I'm sorry, she's too political. We want someone apolitical. And I have a contract, a termination letter that says that due to your participation in CA and RC protests, it was a brand I was endorsing, and they did one
Really?
shoot, and yeah, and it said that you brought disrepute to our brand because of your participation in CA and RC protests.
Because you stood for what you believed in.
But honestly, ma'am, I feel like it's not. I mean, I actually have no hard feelings, and I don't blame either the producers or anyone, because the thing is that, are we really a society that respects freedom of opinion? We're not. We really are not. I mean, if look at what we do to our filmmakers. I mean, whether it's and this is not even a party issue. This is not even a like it's any government is like this.
Exactly.
It's not which party comes. I mean, I remember when Arakshan came out, and that was the Congress government. There was a whole bunch of states that banned it without watching the film.
Yeah.
They just banned it, like, and it was so bizarre on the basis of the trailer. Pro reservation and anti reservation,
Right.
both lobbies were protesting. I'm like, wow, this must be some other film only where both sets of people are protesting. So it's. I think that as a country we give too much importance to hurt sentiments. We give too little importance to our constitutional principles or our rule of law.
But
Quite
also,
frankly.
Swara, it's not just a question of government censorship. There's also the corporate censorship that we don't talk enough about.
Absolutely.
Which is actually perhaps more damaging, because here commercial interests can be cited, and you can say, oh, it's bad for business, and after all, filmmaking is a business. So you can't even argue on that.
Absolutely. I
So
mean, and what I have actually seen is that, as I said, that there is nothing to suggest that there has been any monetary damage to anybody by my being
because
in
of
any
your,
scene.
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, Veere the Wedding was a 100 crore plus film worldwide grossing,
With 4 women leading it,
and no hero.
no
So,
hero.
a lot of it is actually just perception. It's
Yeah.
just fear. It really, literally is so obviously the politics of fear mongering
Yeah.
and making people seem unviable economically or otherwise. And actually, nothing in the numbers suggests that. I mean, with all the controversy that happened around Rasbhari is one of the highest viewed shows.
Exactly, and people love it. So
And people have liked it, and it was, I mean, it was in the top 10 trending the week that Dil Bechara released.
right.
And so it's just, but as you saying that, like, most people are only going on shallow perception. None of this is really, I mean, if you actually sit down and rationally think about a lot of these things, we will not be so offended all the time, first of all. And I think we're just losing that space for any kind of rational, nuanced either thought or debate.
But it's so wonderful that, never mind, the big producers or whatever, whoever they are, although you still get to work on the V-Rays of the world. I don't think you can have any bigger producer than Ria and Sonam. I think they're really smart women. They know what they're
Yeah,
doing. But
absolutely.
you look at the kind of work that you're doing in the digital space as well. Look at Flesh. You
Yeah.
wouldn't get this kind of opportunity in cinema, at least not such a character arc. So I think increasingly,
I don't have any complaints,
yeah,
absolutely.
and
And I think that
increasingly it doesn't
weirdly,
matter, no?
yeah, I mean,
If you
weirdly,
find your space,
I mean, I think that the thing is that, weirdly, despite all the controversies and so on and all that rubbish, I have actually somehow, touch wood, and I hope it continues, managed to balance both film and OTT. So
right?
it's kind of, I've actually been able to sort of balance that both quite decently, and I feel quite lucky for it. And I think that now, of course, I've also been now 10 years. This is my 10th year in the industry. My first release was 2010.
Right.
Madhaulal Keep Walking. And I think that now, because it's been 10 years and I understand things a little better, I'm actually looking for ways to turn a producer.
Yeah.
And I have.
You haven't you, with your brother?
I mean, yeah, we've launched this company, but I've been struggling with this one script for the last whole year. So I'm trying to write something because I want to produce what I've written. And so we're in the process of that. And of course, everything takes time. But yeah, that's what my next sort of aim for myself is.
But how has storytelling evolved over the last 10 years, Swara, in the industry? Have you seen, we all talk about women-centric roles, etc., but they seem to be more the safer biopics, everything is in place. There's nothing that challenges the status quo. There's a particular kind of storytelling that is taking hold of the industry, which seems to be quite a safe kind of storytelling. It's very rare that something steps over the line. So, does that disappoint you?
I mean, I think that I'm not surprised by that, honestly, ma'am, because as I said, that that we live in such a fractious, polarized, inflammable world. I mean, now, and I'll cite two examples: the whole controversy around Padmavat and the whole controversy around Kedarnath, which everyone has conveniently forgotten.
Yeah.
But while Sushant was alive, the very people who are now claiming to seek justice for him were banning his film.
Yes.
That film was banned in Uttarakhand simply for showing a interreligious marriage.
Right.
Now, when this is how sort of inflammable the social context is, why would producers actually want to risk their investment? Because as you said, everything, that money logic is such a logic that all other arguments fail before that.
Yeah.
So why would a producer want to risk their investment and make it go into a loss knowingly? You know what I mean? So there is a huge element of self-censorship that we are sort of gripped by currently. And luckily, I think for us, because of Flesh, and I noticed this, that even the trolls are not being able to troll me, because this is such an issue where really,
I mean, how can you have an argument?
How can you have a problem with?
But they'll find something, Swara. Please give them a little time.
Yeah. They'll have to wait for the release. So they'll not. Actually, they won't even watch it. They never watch anything. They're putting fake IMDb ratings and all this rubbish is going on. But I think that you're right. You're absolutely right. And I think that when you make the society and public discourse so brittle, then nobody is going to. Most people will not want to take a ponga.
Right.
You will have all these very palatable, very safe, very likable stuff coming out.
Right. And that's really then you have to go into the digital space and hope that something exciting happens. But that is a place where exciting things are happening, and you can make them happen, isn't it so?
Yes, but even that is now a space that they want to censor.
Yeah, that is.
So there is a whole debate now exactly around that because this was a space where actually you could see a little free storytelling, and you could have stories like a Sacred Games, like a Patal Lok, like a Leela, like a Flesh, in that sense, that now even that space is now going to get so severely restricted.
But
I mean, just look at this whole debate.
Anti-Hindu. I mean, that boggles the mind. Yeah, you were saying, look at this whole debate on.
No, I'm just saying everything. I haven't seen the film, but I was just reading some of the articles around Gunjan Saxena, that Kargil girl, and I was like, I mean, it's some individual person's individual story.
Right.
Now, why should the Air Force officers and retired officers and everyone take so much umbrage? That is her experience. That is her journey.
Right.
She's written a blog about it now. Right. She has a right to talk about it. It's almost like we just of course we've lost the capacity to listen to each other and to a difference of opinion. Now we're becoming a society where we can't listen to somebody's story also.
Right. I wanted to ask you, how many cases do you have against you? Are there how many court cases are you fighting, or have they slapped against you?
The thing is that I'm actually not fighting any court cases, because all this noise that they make, these are all petitions. And most of them are so silly and flimsy that they are not admitted even by and some of them are just outright outlandish.
Right.
So it's actually, luckily, touchwood to date, I have never actually had to fight a court case, and I really hope that it continues like that, because I have no desire to khao jail ki roti.
But there are a lot of people who would be quite happy to make you do that. I have to ask you, of course, about Sushant's case, and you mentioned him as well. What is going on in the industry right now? Why has everybody lost their sense of proportion, sense of balance?
I mean, I think there's only a few people who've lost their sense of proportion and balance, and I think that they are
But
really
they're
very.
so vocal.
I don't know what, I don't know who's getting what from from sort of this whole case and dragging it out like this. But as I've said, and I've said this publicly, that if we cannot be in a situation where we as an audience assumes the role of jury and judiciary and justice. I mean, it just, there is a process in this country, and I think that actually the role that the electronic media has played in this whole thing, and to some extent certain print outlets as well, has been so damaging, and it has been absolutely shocking. Actually, it's inexcusable, and I think that yeah, it's really actually quite horrifying.
So,
And
what's your take on this whole blind items, and they can be detrimental to the health of actors? Does that have any impact on the way you're perceived?
I mean, look, no, I don't think anybody would defend blind items. All
Right.
right, they're silly and they're frivolous, and they can be very, very hurtful. But I just want to say that this whole blind item thing. So two of the blind items that were being circulated as being about Sushant, one of them is actually about a different actor altogether. It's not even about Sushant. So and a lot of the times I think that we also have to ask the question, why is it that papers put blind items? Who is reading these? I think that is that the audience is very conveniently forgetting their role as
Yeah.
consumers. And I have said this again and again, and I'll say this again and again, that if you really love outsiders so much, please watch our films in theaters.
Right.
That is the greatest service you can do to us.
Yeah.
That is that is the biggest role. I mean, everyone is going on about Sushant now. Where was all these people when Sonchadiya released?
Yeah.
Where were all these people when Kedarnath was being sort of banned? Where were all these people when Byomkesh Bakshi had come out? So it's a very. I mean, this particular issue has been hijacked by people who have vested interests, and I feel very, very, very. It's very tragic, and I think we are doing a great disservice to Sushant and to his memory.
I wanted to ask you about your future choices, and some of the things that you're planning to do now, apart from your own production, as you said. Is the way forward clear?
Well, I'm actually I've ended up having a very productive lockdown, because I'm going to have 3 releases in this lockdown.
Okay.
So I had Rasbari
right.
on Amazon Prime Video at the end of June. I have Flesh on Eros now coming out on the 21st, of course, and I have Bhag Bini Bhag on Netflix.
Oh.
Which is going to be out in a few months. Then I have Sheer Khurma, which is a long short film that stars Shabana ji, Divya
And
Datta ji,
Divya
and me.
Datta, yeah.
A very lovely same-sex love story, beautiful film. So these are my releases, and as I said, I'm working on some very interesting projects. Of course, now we don't know when we'll be able to shoot again, so of course all the timelines have gotten
Right.
skewed. But I'm very hopeful that by the end of the year, I will have something that I would have had a fairly large role in putting together, like behind the scenes. Hopefully by the end of the year, or as soon as we can get back to shoot, which is not clear right now.
So you're writing something even as we speak.
I've written some stuff, and we're now trying to put it together. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Swara, for talking
Thank you,
to us,
ma'am.
and really for being yourself. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.